Hello everyone, how you doing? It's Eric here, and today we're going to talk about some ARPGs, or RPGs as they say the swashbuckling terms. I want to talk about Oninaki. Now, if you don't know what this game is, it's a little Japanese ARPG that's from the Square Enix's very own Tokyo RPG Factory, and it's looking cool, or at least I thought so. And so when the demo released, I thought, I'm going to dive into this, I'm going to see what it's like. And my expectations going into it, compared to what I got coming out of it, were kind of very different. Some were really good things, and some not so good that we're going to talk about, but we'll get into it. So let's start here with the combat, because the combat is, well, so heavy. And I, going into this, thought it was going to be really, not super duper fast paced, but, you know, it's not going to be like Bayonetta, I'm hacking and slashing through everything. But I also didn't think it was going to be like down to the level of like Dark Souls, where it's like commit to every movement, you're a hulking beast. Your movements are very much committed to. If you swing that sword until that animation finishes, you ain't dodging, you ain't doing anything. There are exceptions, which we might get into later, but just know that the combat is not just as fast as you can, it's very much more slash, dodge. Now that instantly sounds like it's going to be a bad thing, and it's not, but it takes a little while to kind of break out of that. And I say it's not as in like, probably not, we don't know 100% yet, but when you start the game and all you can do is just one basic attack, one special attack, and a dodge, you kind of come into it and you're like, this feels slow, there's not much else to the game, do something. This right here is why I'm glad they did something special with the demo. Now, if you've played any of their previous demos like Lost Sphere, you know that they kind of throwed you right into the middle of the game. It kind of got confusing, to be honest. You didn't know what you were doing. In this one, they throw you right into the start, which, as I said, makes you feel underpowered. So you can see the two kind of differences here. One, you got no idea what's going on because they're throwing too much at you at once, and the other, you're starting with nothing. They did something clever here though. They said, let's not give them one or the other, let's give them both. So after you play through, what I recommend doing is just playing through the start of the game. It'll probably take you like an hour and a half, maybe. I can't remember how long it took me, maybe an hour and a half. Then there's a battle mode that you can choose from the menu, and it's just simply, you're later in the game, you're like level 20, you've got 4 of your special demon attack things that follow you around, and you can actually, they're called daemons, I'll get into that later, but it gets to me. But when you've got multiple things to change between and different modes of attack, it starts to feel better. It's not perfect, but it feels better. I just realized I put most of my notes into this combat section here and not as much into everything else, but the combat is the most important part, so I definitely want to touch on this for just a little bit longer here. Now, it's kind of like Xenoblade, stick with me here, in the way that you had your blades in Xenoblade, the things that followed you around, and you could switch between them. Switching between them would change your attacks. This is kind of similar. So you have these things they call daemons, and you can have 4 equipped at a time and then change between them. These control everything from your basic attack to your special attacks to even the way you dodge or block or whatever. So like some will have just a constant block they can put up, some will dodge roll, some will teleport, some can jump. It's kind of unique in the way that it completely changes your playstyle depending on which one you are. At the point that you had 4 of them and you had many abilities, you started to feel powerful and like you had choice in battle. And I think that's what the start of the game is kind of missing. It was missing that choice, and so at the start it feels very slow, very much like there's one path through this and all I'm doing is attacking and then dodging, and then attacking and then dodging. Where later on in this other demo, I feel like I can jump into this battle to make sure, with using the lance unit, to make sure that I don't take damage, or the dragoon, because the dragoon's a more attractive name than lance. Why was that a necessary tangent? But this dragoon could jump into battle, stopping ranged units from getting to you, so it was a smarter choice for a lot of your battles. Or you could choose the shield unit and walk in holding your shield so they couldn't attack you on the first step, because like I said, your character movement, not just your attacks, but your character movement is also a little bit sluggish, so getting into battles can be as much of a task as actually doing the attacks themselves. Now, the way I just described it, we kind of see a glimpse of what they can do with this battle system. I want to know how far they take it. They might just leave it there and that could be it, and it's that little bit of choice between you, or they could simply be like doing bosses and be like, okay, change and change and change, because you got to stay proactive here. I'll see how it goes. If you're wondering about what I mentioned earlier, like cancelling attack to dodge roll, basically the idea is you can build up an affinity chart that after doing a certain amount of attacks, it gets to a certain percentage, and let's say 100%, and you can use it to do I guess that super mode where you're like really strong and you can roll out of the way of attacks at any point and you don't take knockback, all of those type of things. Okay, point number 2. It's really a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. Now, going into this, if you know Tokyo RPG Factory, their Iron Setsuna and Lost Sphere games, they're dark RPGs in the first place. They try to harken back to, I guess the studio is created to do this, they try to harken back to like old school RPGs, and I think they do pick up that vibe. Like if you go back to like Chrono Trigger and those type of games, they do have a dark side to them. This one is deliberately dark all the way through. I don't want to take that as a bad thing though. Like, I just want to put that out there so that people know when they're getting into this, they know what to expect. I mean, I personally like it a bit more lighthearted, but I can definitely appreciate this story and what they do with it. It goes some places. There's one thing here in particular that really helped me understand the world and the way that it is. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to try to set it up just a little bit so we can all understand how the world shows things that may be radical in our world, but it's just kind of normal for them. When someone dies in this world, they can reincarnate, they can come back, but there is things that can tie them to this world. Things like someone grieving over them. If they still feel like they need to be here for that person, they can't move on. They can't complete that process of coming back. They'll be stuck there and eventually they're going to turn into a monster. Now they sewed a story thread around this very carefully so that by the time you got to the end of it and you're left with this decision, the decision played on me. It made me think, what would I do in their position? And upon thinking that, I understood the world. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but I just want to get the point across that the world is really dark. It's full of like cults and death is just something that's naturally talked about all the time. It's not awkward. It's not something that's out of place in this world. And the intro even starts with your parents dying. Extremely dark. For number 3 here, there is more to these daemons than I thought there was going to be. Now, obviously going into this, we knew they were going to be some sort of weapon. And I talked about before how much you get out of that weaponry. Like the fact that they are your dodge, they are your attack, they're everything that your abilities are built around. But they're not just that. They're also tied into the story. They have their own story. Now the setup here is when a soul is lost, so like I said before, if they don't reincarnate, then after a while they either turn into a demon or a daemon. I know. Now when they turn into one of these daemons, which I believe is when they a human with such strong emotions, such strong ties that they don't actually transform into a demon, when they turn into these daemons, well, that's what we're left with. These things that we can kind of summon to fight by our side. They don't have any memories, but here's where it gets a bit more interesting. You see, we can unlock their memories. It's actually done through the skill tree, which is the second part of where this gets double folded interesting, but we can unlock their memories through a skill tree and then go see the cutscene, see what plays out, and find out their backstory, because they all have their own story. We only got to play with the 4 in the demo, but there are more than that. We haven't seen them all yet. Now the skill tree is very much your usual skill tree. You unlock a sphere, it unlocks more spheres, then you can get more spheres, and you can just... And then lastly, you don't actually equip the weapons yourself. The daemons all have their own weapons. Kind of similar to Xenoblade again, where they all have their own blades. Although, talking about Xenoblade, this is a lot more simpler than that. Xenoblade was like stacked upon stacked upon stacked of just different systems to understand. This is still pretty simple. Lastly here, we have number 4, the parallel worlds, which they almost nailed this. They really did. It almost feels like it's really good the way they're using this 2-world system. But there's one way they messed up, and I'm going to touch on that first. So when you're in this world and you're flicking at any time you want between the 2 worlds, they're actually literal parallel worlds. So you will switch over to one and it's like you're jumping to a different location. All the enemies are different in that location. You defeat one on one side, there's another group of them on the other side. And that can get a little bit tedious when you got to defeat the enemies on both sides of the world. Personal taste here, I just would prefer that it was a filter that just came across the top and just changed the world the way you're seeing it. That way it can still do what it does now, where it changes the environments and makes the way you traverse different and stuff that you can interact with different, but doesn't respawn all the enemies. I think that's what's narking me here. To just throw it back here into the positive side of the court for a second, there is one thing that they do that is a little bit better here. Makes up for it. These area conditions is what I'm talking about. So when you go to the dark side, there's certain conditions that they can put you under, whether it be something like always critical hits. So when you're in there, you're just always doing critical hits. I like the fact that there's this kind of reward system for using that side, but then you need to do the other side. So you need to be kind of swapping between them. That's kind of clever. If this little discussion here made you go, ooh, maybe I'm interested in that, then just consider trying the demo for yourself. It's a hard recommend. It's a good game, but there's certainly points of the game where I could see someone might not like the dark story side of things. Someone might find this combat too sluggish, and then on the other side, someone might love that type of combat, and someone might find this story engaging and really like the dark side. So try it yourself and see what you think. This demo's, if you want it to be, is just from the start of the game, and it continues onto the main game. So there's kind of no reason to not if you're thinking about it. Anyway, thanks for tuning in today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this in the future, where I keep you up to date on all these upcoming fun stuff that I'm doing and wallowing on to the end. So let's end this. Thank you for joining, and remember, for great Nintendo entertainment, you can count on me.